And welcome to you all. Good turnout and difficult acoustic conditions. I didn't expect to be robo-chairman today. I wasn't expecting to have this special effects headwear. Anyway, as Nigel said, I'm going to talk a little bit about innovation and technology and a few of the contextual reasons why I think it's so important for us to continue to invest in innovation, many examples of which we have wonderfully displayed around this exhibition. As you know, I'm the chairman of Network Rail. That means I don't have an executive role. I just challenge and advise and encourage the executive team. And I don't think they've ever been so encouraged on technology and innovation since they have been over the last 3 years, and actually, I'm actually quite proud of that. I want to talk about innovation, not just in the context of the longer-term future of the railway, but also the more immediate future, the delivery of our Control Period 5, which we're now entering the second year of. And innovation plays a key role in delivering in the short and medium term, not just in the long term. So I'll try and cover a bit of both. As you all know, and there's no new news here, we have seen extraordinary growth in the rail sector. In many ways, this growth is fantastic news, and we never object to growth, we support growth. But believe me, it's challenging when growth is running ahead of forecasts and when growth is actually running considerably ahead of capacity planning. That means more and more passengers are using our network, and actually we don't have the installed capacity to properly provide them with the correct service that they have a right to expect. That's not just a rolling stock and infrastructure issue, it's a stations issue as well, as many of you will know who use some of our stations that are operating well beyond their sort of original design capacity. But that growth is set to continue. Now, this chart says it's 36% by 2031. To quote Paddy Ashdown on election night, I'll eat my hat if it's not bigger than that. I haven't actually seen him eat his hat yet. I've got a rice hat, so I'm okay. So we expect huge growth, and we've got to manage that growth. We've got to manage it efficiently, and that's where we're going to have to be thinking differently rather than building just more steel and concrete. We also know not only are our customers voting with their wallets, both freight customers and passengers, but also the economy depends heavily on a successful and efficient rail infrastructure. And this has been recognized very strongly by the politicians and the ministers involved in this part of the world, where they realize, and the socioeconomic case is very strong, and examples of this, we see the work going on in the north of the country, and the discussion about the Northern Powerhouse, the Northern Hub, and the Transport for the North report that was launched just a month or so ago. I'm actually on the Transport for the North board. I represent Network Rail on that board, and it's very interesting, exciting what could happen there as we prepare the alternatives that people can select from for funding in CP6. So what are our priorities? No surprises here either. Safety and efficiency. We believe that safety and efficiency go hand in hand because they're the result of operational excellence. Operational excellence in planning, operational excellence in execution, and the introduction of structured continuous improvement, a systematic way of continuously improving everything we do and capturing that improvement so it can be replicated in all our operations. Improving customer service. This is not just about improving punctuality. One of the key differentiating offers to the customer of the railway journey is punctuality. And if you don't deliver punctuality, you're not delivering one of the key aspects of rail travel. So we don't complain about growth. We have to rise to the challenge of the impact that growth has on punctuality. Our assets have never been more reliable, but they're not reliable enough. They need to be even more reliable to deliver a sustainable railway and a punctual railway with the growth rates that we anticipate. And the last point I'm trying to make here is a change of culture, a customer-centric culture where we always care for our customers. Even when things go wrong, we're out there caring for our customers and showing that we care for our customers in a very visible way. It goes without saying that we need to maintain a sustainable asset base, and we need to manage these huge capacity increases that I talked about. When we signed up to CP5, what did we agree to deliver? Well, an extra 170,000 seats at peak time for commuters, shorter journey times and hundreds more daily services between the cities of the north, electrifying more than 850 miles of railway, which is proving to be a huge challenge, and transforming hundreds of our stations around the country, including the obvious big ones like London Bridge, Manchester Victoria, and Birmingham New Street, which is nearly finished. I'm going to see it this afternoon to see how they're getting on with the roof has now been installed. And Glasgow Queen Street, not to forget that. We also agreed to implement a 25% reduction, further reduction in level crossings risks by closing and improving them, and improving train punctuality by to 92.5% by the end of CP5 across the country. Set of objectives in CP5 for us to rise to. So this is the biggest investment in the railways for more than a century to meet that increasing demand investment, both in capacity and in renewals. And we have been successful in persuading governments to fund this investment, but here's an example of how the cost of running the railway has been reducing over the last 15 years. And you can see the successive control periods. In the first control period, CP3, we reduced it by 27%, CP4 by a further 20%, and then CP5, our target's reduced by 18%. So we're here at Railtex, where we are connecting with our supply chain. And all of these challenges I described, we are having to partner with you willingly, and we recognize we need to, with strong relationships, because we can't deliver this without you. We can't deliver what we set up for CP5, and we can't get match ready. The supply base needs also to invest in the same techniques. And it's our job to help stimulate that move. If you look at companies like Toyota in the auto sector, they have revolutionized the supply base here in the UK, as they have in other countries, by sharing their approach on continuous improvement and quality with their supply base, which wasn't altruistic. It was what they needed to do to get the quality of delivery of parts so they could continue to deliver high-quality vehicles. Well, we have exactly the same challenge in rail. Without a high-quality supply base, continuously innovating, we won't be able to deliver any of our goals. And closer collaboration. That, by the way, includes sharing pain and gain. It means sharing risk and also sharing opportunity. And I think it means a full understanding of supply chain requirements and those efficiencies that need to be delivered, and a whole life approach to product management, which I've seen some great examples of as I've been walking around this morning. So what does whole life project management mean? It's basically a shift away from specification bidding to let's look at the whole life cycle, including where are we, what's the strategy we have for this asset or this asset class or this system, and then building a product strategy into the plans for implementation. And having a closed loop feedback system where we're monitoring how successful we've been on that whole life management to make sure we've delivered what we want. So why would we do all this? Well, there are benefits, I believe, for all the key parties. For Network Rail, there are lower whole life costs, which we can pass on to the government, and they can decide to pass on either to customers in the way of fare rises or lack of fare rises, or they can pass on to taxpayers in the way of reduced subsidies. It will also lead to improved asset reliability, and, if I may say so, improved plant reliability. One of the problems we have with our increasingly restricted access to the network, as we get less and less chance to maintain and renew it, is we really can't afford for any of the plant that turns up for one of our hard-won, carefully planned, expensive possessions to break down, because that scuppers the whole job. So plant reliability is an absolutely increasingly crucial element of our supply chain performance in terms of being able to successfully deliver for us and our projects. But I think also the benefits for Network Rail would translate into lower fixed costs. We spend less time on transactional deals in terms of the fixed costs in the central purchasing area, less time on project management, doing rework and change. As you know, change control and change is by far the most expensive element, and also less time on product management. For our supply chain partners, the benefits lower cost and gain share on improved margins, more certainty, as I mentioned, leading to a higher stable workforce, and predictable work schedules, which will allow you to lower your overall cost. Holding stuff in reserve in case we change our mind is a very expensive option. And opportunities, back to Railtex, to introduce innovation, to table innovation by partnering with your tier N suppliers to bring that to the table. And for customers, the people who ultimately pay all of our salaries and sustain this railway, more punctual trains, lower fares and reduced subsidy, and fewer large delays and cancellations. So it seems to me there's a pretty compelling business case here, and we're already well embarked, as you know, on this strategy. It's really important that we make it work together. I'm going to skip this slide because I've largely said it already, because I want to talk about technology. So what role does technology have in reshaping our futures together? Successfully is to pool all the ideas and knowledge in a commercial framework that incentivizes the people who decide to invest in that framework and drive that. And as I said in my opening remarks this morning at 10:30, innovation isn't just about the big changes, the structural changes. Actually, most innovation doesn't happen like that. Most innovation is smaller scale innovation happening across a very broad range of activities, which when you sum it all up, creates big changes in performance, in cost efficiency, and in outcomes for our customers. So, micro-innovation and continuous improvement are a key part of what we see in terms of technology opportunities. Big changes have happened in asset measurement technologies. We're moving inexorably away from visual inspection by human operators with all of the measurement system challenges that that poses, however highly skilled those operators are, to more and more objective measures of physical characteristics that we can measure in SI units, which give us much better characterization of the condition of the asset. And that journey requires a lot of innovation. It's sensor innovation, data processing innovation, analytics innovation, and also as we move down this journey, not collecting everything on the yellow trains, moving that technology onto the service train so that we can have lower cost collection in real time of many of the asset pieces of information that we need. Now, when I say that, I get all the yellow train enthusiasts panicking. Well, my message is don't panic, because as more we discover we want to measure, we'll find new jobs for the yellow trains as we migrate the mature measurement systems from the yellow trains onto the service trains. So there's plenty more still to measure. Believe me, I don't think we're even a third of the way through the task of converting subjective measurements to objective measurements in the rail asset condition monitoring. Now, a huge trend is, in this space is mechatronics, and I think rail is particularly really, like aerospace, it's a really good place to deploy mechatronic technology. Active pantographs have the potential to considerably improve the life and the failure modes of our overhead lines. But that can only be done by a collaborative approach between overhead line producers and maintainers and pantograph designers and rolling stock companies. Active bogies, a similar position there, where we're looking at the interaction between the track and the wheel and looking at ways of reducing the wear. And we had a chat with one of the rolling stock manufacturers, lightweight bogies, same story. If we can reduce the impact loads and the steady state loads on the rail, we can significantly reduce the cost of maintaining a rail, and that's a joined up conversation. Great success so far with the trials of hybrid electric trains. I'm really excited about those. How can we introduce electrification on parts of the network where today's technology doesn't work? It's not affordable. An intelligent approach using hybrid technology, storing energy on the train, minimizing the expensive costs of electrifying the railway to only where you need it, but still having electric traction for being able to reach out through the network along the lower density lines to take our customers where they need to go at higher speed and with lower operating costs. I should mention, I haven't got it on my slide, double-decker coaches and rolling stock. When I first mentioned that in this industry, I was told I was a madman. I'm an idiot. I don't understand. The British gauge, Richard, is smaller than the continental gauge that you've seen all these double-decker trains on. I said, I know, but I've measured the gauge, and I think you can get a double-decker train through there. So anyway, as you know, we're currently working on a double-decker train concept to see if we can actually make that work. And this is all about how do we get more capacity out of an existing network? How do we get more passengers on this expensive infrastructure that we've already paid for and are constantly maintaining? Because passengers and freight earns revenue. And I tell you, at the moment, our yield on this network is really, really low. And the opportunities are to improve it using technology. Talk a little bit about the repoint switch. Again, when I was here 3 years ago, not this building, by the way, but where this Railtex exhibition, I said to the industry, I don't understand why you're using the same design as you were 20 years ago for points. Not 20 years ago, 150 years ago. Why aren't you using aerospace design with redundancy and fail-safe? Anyway, 2.5 years later, they called me up to Loughborough University and showed me the first working model of repoint. which is a fabulous piece of innovation, which is fail-safe, cannot fail unsafe, and which has triple redundancy. Costs the same as today's points and a tenth to maintain. That's the kind of technology that can transform our industry from a capacity point of view, from a punctuality point of view, and so on. And on electronics, we could talk about a number of things that can help on passenger public safety, but we could also talk about the digital railway. The digital railway is not new to you. Mark Kahn's talked a lot about it. It's taking a lesson learned from Heathrow, where we looked at the way they squeezed more capacity by closing up the gaps between the aircraft landing slots. We can do the same thing in the railways. As we get closer and closer to our operators to deliver a seamless service for passengers and freight, we have the opportunity to get more trains on our tracks. Why now? Because we are running short of capacity. It takes us too long, it costs us too much more money to build more railways. We need to get more trains on our tracks. We know that it can enable us in many different ways: safety, capacity, speed. It will require in-cab signaling to be accelerated across the network. And that acceleration can take place from currently 2065 to 2029 completion by having a much more aggressive deployment approach. We can also do the same thing with our customer interface: digital ticketing, digital enablers for our customers. Get rid of the confusing tariffs to simplified tariffs. Go to dynamic pricing. Give better running time information. And even, I was talking to one of the train rolling stock companies, read your seat preferences from your smart device to your seat motors to your comfort position, just like a memory seat in a car. And isn't the government already investing in rail? Yes, but even with HS2 and even with HS3, we won't have enough capacity. We still need to get more capacity on the current network. So as I said, from 2062 to pulling it ahead to 2029, and what would it give us? It would give us between 15 and 45% more capacity on the same piece of line, according to early modeling. What we're now doing is developing the business case to try to demonstrate that investing and accelerating the deployment of digital railway is a good business proposition for our stakeholders. And with that, I'd like to thank you, have a good show, and invite any questions you may have. Thank you. So it's a solutions-based approach rather than a specification fulfillment-based approach. It's co-engineering, it's collaboration. And what many other sectors... The benefits of HS2 don't just provide benefits to those people who are on that line. Actually, the bigger benefits are the people on the existing network railway, where we can now schedule a different service. Instead of having to have all these through trains dashing up to Manchester and Liverpool and Glasgow, we can now provide a much better intermediate station service, which will significantly boost the ability and the economic prospects of those people living in those intermediate cities.